It is interesting times to say the least. We have got to talk about this. As you know, the story was this. We heard it about a week ago or so. Um, there was a glitch is the wrong word. There was a fault in how Arizona voters were verified as citizens based on the law. So let me explain it very briefly. If you got your license before driver's license in Arizona before 1996, if you did get your license before 1996, you were not required to show proof of citizenship to get a driver's license. After 1996, you had to show you were a citizen to get an Arizona driver's license. So then in 2004, they made a law. So if you registered to vote after 2004, you're required to prove you were a citizen to vote in statewide elections. So it made sense, since you had to prove you were a citizen to drive or have a driver's license, that you could use your Arizona driver's license as proof of citizenship. It just made sense. Well, it turns out that that was not necessarily the case for some. That some people, because I fit into this category. I got a driver's license in 1995. But then I had gotten, after 1995, I had gotten a duplicate. So it showed the issue date as being after 1996. So it looked as if I had proven my citizenship in order to get a driver's license. That's not the case. I was grandfathered in. Therefore, my driver's license would not have been proof of citizenship had I registered to vote after 2004. I hope that clears up the question. When it was discovered, this glitch was discovered, there were about 97,000 voters that were directly affected by it. So all of the powers that be, the Secretary of State who oversees elections, the Attorney General, obviously for reasons, the Attorney General had to be a part of this legal conversation, and the governor of Arizona, Katie Hobbs, all were in a conversation. Now there's two questions here because it was leaked. And this is the part of it that I don't know. And if I were the governor, maybe she's not saying, maybe she doesn't know. I would want to know who has it out for me. Who is it that would leak this phone call? Their conversation is an eyebrow raiser, as one of the three initially advocated for disenfranchising what was then thought to be nearly 150,000 voters. Turned out to not be. It was 97,000, but was still a big number. The 40-minute phone call on September 10th, which included staff, was initiated by the Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes. They had found out that about 98,000 had not provided proof that they are U.S. citizens when they registered to vote. So the question is, do we only give those voters federal-only ballots? What do we do? What is the question? Or do we ignore state law and allow them to vote in the state and local elections? The governor called it a dire situation, one that conspiracy theorists would jump on and try to blow up the 2020 and 22 elections. The attorney general worried they'd be accused of rigging the 2024 election if it impacted voters removed from the rolls. And the Secretary of State predicted correctly that they would get beaten up, and his quote is, "No matter what the hell we do." That's his words. So the governor suggested that they be restricted to voting only in the federal races. Here's the quote. If I was in your shoes, Secretary, I would take those 148,000 voters and move them to federal only and do everything I could to provide resources for the counties to deal with that additional burden and to ensure the confidence in the system. I'm sure that there's a very small percentage of those voters that are not actually eligible. And I agree with that, by the way. I agree with the governor in that regard, that I almost fell into this category. I talked to a guy yesterday named Mike who didn't fall into it, but the same age group as me, in the sense of we both got our driver's license. He got his in 1994. I got mine in 1995. Both of us had registered to vote before 2004, so we were grandfathered in. But most of the people that fall into this category, I would say the vast majority, are citizens. Mays and Fontes were properly horrified, pointing out both the potential ineligibility and optics for the Democratic office holders given the last-minute boot. So Mays said, if we do what you're talking about, we're talking about disenfranchising probably tens of thousands of Republican voters. Now, to be clear, the Attorney General Chris Mays is a Democrat. So is the Secretary of State, and so is the governor. And you've got two Democrats saying, we can't do that. But the governor, according to this phone call, listen to this. I have no intention of notifying 148,000 voters at this stage of the game that they have to scramble around when the state of Arizona has been providing them full ballots all this time. That's a quote from Adrian Fontes. Eventually, Hobbs agreed to back Fontes' call for giving the impacted voters a full ballot, but warned it's still going to create just a blank storm of told you so, all these illegals are voting from the other side. So the question is, why would the governor want to do that? I disagree with her. I think that we have to do what is being done. People have been voting. How many of them actually are voting anyway? And then how many of that 97,000 are actually ineligible voters? I would imagine that number is very, very small, and we're going to find out. That's the thing. Once this election cycle is over, I promise you, they are going to get to the bottom of how many of those 97,000 voters are, and they're registered voters. I don't know how many of them actually have ever voted, and how many of them are actually ineligible because they're not citizens. We're going to find out that number. But the bigger question here is, who leaked the call? Who leaked the call? All of the, everybody talks about the infighting. We're going to talk later on about this, about another Republican, this time former United States Senator Jeff Flake, endorsing Vice President Harris. We're going to talk about the infighting in the Republican Party. That's been very, very well documented. It is a conversation that needs to happen. But if you think there's kumbaya in the Democratic Party, well, this proves you're wrong. Somebody leaked that phone call. Somebody leaked that phone call to say to the media, can you believe that the governor of this state's idea originally was to disenfranchise what she thought at the time was almost 150,000 voters, that they should get federal-only ballots? And you've got the Attorney General and the Secretary of State saying, are you kidding? We can't do that. But why would they leak it? I think it's a fantastic question. Why would they leak it? Somebody wanted to make sure that it got out there.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.